we're talking about what player should we return the ball to when it comes to the return shot, okay? So today we're talking about probably something a little more beyond the beginner. So to back up real quick, I work with a bunch of beginners and intermediate players. That's really the demographic I like to spend time teaching and enjoy. I do work with some higher level players on different things, but for the most part, this is beginners and intermediate. But today specifically is probably a little beyond the beginner. Now we're starting getting into intermediate play for today's topic, okay? So let's talk about return shot. So typically when we're first teaching the return, we're talking about returning. So this is the return team, this is the serve team, so this is the returner here, and typically we're talking about returning it to the tee right here in between these two players to get it as close to the baseline as possible and also keep it in the middle, because a lot of times these two players have not communicated and decided who's covering the middle. So they run into communication errors there, whether it's hitting paddles, whether it's watching the ball go through, whether it's hitting the ball at the last minute, not knowing that the other one had the ball, all of those fun things, right? So today we're going to build on that. We're going to talk about who we should return it to, okay? Because this is a question that I received yesterday and a few times since, or before that, but yesterday specifically brought this topic back up. Was asked, what player should we return the ball to, or who should we return it to? So number one, the player with the weaker third shot indoor drives, right? So if it's a team that's driving and you notice both teams are driving, then you can see what player is giving you the better drive to handle or is inconsistent in their drives. They're hitting in the net, and then the other time they're getting it up. And then the other player is consistently hitting good drives. So then we want to return to the player who is hitting the inconsistent drives or hitting drives that are easier to handle for your team. Number two, and in that same thought process, third drops. So if, say we're returning it, we returned it to this player, number one, and their thirds are great. They're actually causing us trouble. But player number two, they're struggling with their thirds, then player two is where I would make the suggestion for our team as a return team to start repeatedly returning the ball to wherever this player is, whether they're here, whether they're when they score, whether they switch over. That's where I suggest that we start returning the ball and forcing them to have to hit a third, okay? So that would be the first thing that I would be looking for. Return to the player with a less than efficient third, return to the player struggling with their thirds, okay? So that's this player, then we're returning to that player. The second thing, and this one that came up specifically yesterday, was number two, return to the more aggressive player, okay? So say that this player is more aggressive and this player is more, laid back, more passive, more not looking as much to attack, then this is player number one, player number two. We're going to start returning to this player here, okay? Why? Because we want to keep this player off the no volley zone line as long as we can. We want to force them to have to hit a great third shot, whether it's a drive or a drop, and work on keep slowing this player down to the no volley zone. We're not too concerned about this player getting there or not, but we want to keep the more aggressive player back. So in this case, I would start returning to this player to keep them back, with the potential exception that this player is struggling with hitting third. So if they're like 50% third shot drops or ineffective drives, then we may continue to return to this player. But for the most part, if we have an overly aggressive player who's always looking to attack, always looking to create chaos, that player is the one that we're going to start returning to, okay? And try to keep that player back. So as a player is looking, it's a more aggressive player, there's a player looking to attack, there's a player looking to poach or has been poaching successfully. So every time this player drops the ball and we try to get the ball back to this player to keep them back, right? So every time this person drops the ball, this person comes rushing in, and when we look to get this ball back here to keep this player back, this player keeps coming over and poaching, then we're looking to again return to this player and keep this player, because it's also the player that's considered causing problems for our team. So this player is considered poaching. They're looking to get aggressive. Anytime the ball comes to them close to the no volley zone, they're looking to attack, and we're struggling with that. Then that's definitely a player that we're returning the ball to. Okay, so the player, the first one I'm looking for is the first player that's is having weak thirds, weak drives. That's the player I'm going to be returning to. The second reason is a player that's being overly aggressive. So I would say player being overly aggressive would probably trump the player that is missing, unless the player that's missing is missing like 50% or more. Then that definitely sending that ball to that player, because then you're going to start forcing this other player to come over out of position and start trying to hit that third, right? And so then finally, number 3, we're going to also, when we return, we're going to return to the weak side forehand or backhand of the player. So say this is the more, number 1 here is the more aggressive player. What I'm going to do is I'm splitting this in half right here, and then we know this is, so we're going to assume that this player's right-handed, so this is the forehand, and then this is the backhand. I'm going to start working on hitting the ball more towards the backhand of this player and force them to hit more backhand until I see that they can do that, and then I would shift over to forehand to see how they go. You also will find that one player likes to hit, if you go to their backhand, they'll hit more third shot drops and not as many drives. And then if you hit to their dominant side, they like to hit more drives, or they're more effective with their third shot drops. So it forces them to start hitting a shot that they don't want to hit, or hitting a shot that's less aggressive and a lot easier for you to handle. So that's the first thing that I would do. The second thing I would do is start returning the ball wide to force the player to start recovering. And this, again, this is a little more advanced, so it's not like I'm expecting every player to be able to do this, but it's some options. Also something for you to work on. Like I may start hitting the ball that hits here and bounces out wide, forcing this player to come out here to get the ball, because now they're leaving so much court open, which is forcing this player to have to come over and cover. And then after they're hitting the return, they're having to run in to recover. So they're having to cover more ground. And then that allows you to also start working on keeping that player back. Okay. So there's a couple options there. And then the next thing I would do is start working on keeping the player back by hitting it to their feet. So here's another thing to consider is when we're here at the net, and say we're working on keeping the players back, but we're specifically working on this one. This is one shot we don't want to hit. We don't want to hit a shot that lands neutral, like right in front, easily bounces to this player, because all we're doing is inviting them now to attack, okay? And we're already trying to keep this player back. We're trying to keep them neutralized the best we can. So we got a couple options. The first option is probably the best option, which is we're going to go after the feet of the player, okay? And what I mean by that is we're going to try to hit that ball back and bounce it at their feet. And this usually has them take a step back or at least stop where they are and have to dig the ball back. It has them work harder to try to keep the ball down so they can continue to move forward, which is a harder shot, or it backs them up. So if you get it closer to the feet, a lot of players will take a step back and try to hit that return. And they have to hit a good shot in here to make it advance. So the better your shot is at their feet, the less likely it is to be a successful shot every time, right? So you start working on forcing them to hit better shots. You start neutralizing their ability to attack. They may start attacking out of frustration, and that's what we're looking for, because players who start doing that is they start making mistakes. The percentage of mistakes starts going up higher, okay? And then that's option one. So the option one is the feet. Option two is the short ball in the volley zone, forcing them to have to run forward to get the ball. Any player that's moving their feet typically are not hitting a very successful shot a lot of times in the beginner and the intermediate level. If they do, it wasn't on purpose. But number two is not one that I would advise a lot, just for the simple fact that if this player is athletic and they have the ability to get up here to get this ball, all you've done is invited them to the line, and now they're in a position that they want to attack. But from time to time, depending on the mobility of that player, or if you've got that player backpedaling, then hitting a shot forward could be an effective shot. But the first one I always suggest is, let's go after their feet, let's work their forehand, let's work their backhand, let's see which one they're struggling with the most, and continue to try to keep them back and force them to have to hit good shots to get themselves to the line. They're not going to have that much success, but if we come down to it, we've set this up, we might be able to do number two every now and then, just to go ahead and get a clean winner, and get them to start thinking, now that you're able to drop it short and you're able to hit it at their feet, they have to think a lot about that, okay? Things they have to consider. So that is hopefully pretty. I try to narrow that down. I try to keep it from being, because that's like going down a rabbit hole. We could definitely make that a way bigger, more content involved answer, but that's a pretty quick, easy answer that I like to teach. The first two things is, one is what player is struggling with the third. Number two, what player is more aggressive. Those are two things I would be asking myself, and those are two things when I'm hitting returns, or my team's hitting returns, I want us to hit it to each player, because I want to see what each player will do and won't do, what player is having success with what and what player is not having success with what, because that will be a key determination when we need points, or we're getting close to the game and we need to put it away, okay? So those are some very important things to consider. So I hope you enjoyed today's Whiteboard Wednesday. I know I love doing these and talking about these, so I'm just grabbing topics from players who are asking me questions in our weekly lessons, and I do it the next week. But I'm happy to have any of you who would like to see something posted in the comments, video that you would like to see, and I would be glad to go ahead and put that on a list and shoot it, and we'll even tag you and let you know when we're shooting that video so you can watch it, okay? And just see what the breakdown is, because we just love breaking the game down, love to try to give it to you in bite-sized pieces, and then you can take it out that week and start working on it and see about adding it to your game, okay? Again, Thomas Yelloweyes with Night Train Pickleball, and we'll see you in the next Whiteboard Wednesday.